everyone. Welcome to another edition of ARG Presents. I'm your good buddy, Amigo Aaron, joined today by a man who, unlike most fishermen, hates the outdoors and everything it stands for. I give you the Brent.
That's all true. The only time I like going outside is in the fall.
Why the fall?
The spring and summer are too hot and the winter's too cold.
Is that when everything's dying and that makes you happy because you're a ghoul?
Well, no, but I do like to watch the leaves turn.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So, in case you...
Also, that's not dying. That's just like...
That's dying. In case you... Which is what we're doing. In case you missed the show last week, we spun the wheel. We made the deal. And this week, we will be taking a look at BAM fishing video games, the Brent. Fishing games. Now, full disclosure, I very rarely go fishing in real life. In fact, I can count on probably two hands the number of times I've been fishing. And I haven't fished for decades. Because I have never had any luck. Plus, I don't like worms, and I don't like fish. Brent, what about you? When was the last time you went fishing?
I would say I was, let's see, it would have been about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But I have definitely been fishing in my entire lifetime, multiple dozens of times.
Really? Dozens? Who?
Oh, yeah. Pawpaw used to take us, Philip and I, fishing all the time.
Oh, I see. Now, have you ever been fishing on a boat?
Yes.
Really?
I've done boat fishing once.
And how was that?
Yeah. I think they're called John boats, just the flat bottom boats. It was literally, it was a pier, except I was out in the water and setting down. I wasn't brave enough to stand up on the boat.
I don't blame you.
And it was on a calm lake.
Yeah.
It was a row out sort of situation.
Have you ever you never fell off the boat?
No, but I have fallen out of a canoe before.
Well, me too. So I can't. Sadly, you don't fish out of a canoe, I'll tell you that.
No, you don't. I mean, you can, but I don't.
Yeah. So, just for fun, I thought we'd have just a brief look at some of the fishing titles that got released over the years. It's funny, there were way more than I thought. And I thought we'd just go over a few. I found a great website here, virtualpet.com, Brent, that had a real nice look at the early days of fishing. And a lot of these games I didn't know about, Brent, so I thought I'd ask you about it because you have a lot more action on the consoles than I did. Believe it or not, the first thing they've got listed here in terms of fishing titles, it was a 1977 game on the TRS-80 Model III, Brent.
Yes, I went and played this.
Oh,
it was
really?
Absolutely horrible.
It's called Gone Fishing, catchy name, and that's kind of neat. What was the problem? You actually played this. What'd you think?
It's a text-based fishing game.
Really?
Yeah.
I think
it was no good.
I would tie my line to the letter J, if you know what I mean.
Well, you basically pick which direction you want to like cast or go.
Yeah.
And then you cast, and then it randomly generates if you catch a fish or not. I'm sure there's some kind of strategy with it, and I certainly didn't spend more than 2 or 3 minutes with it.
Right.
But yeah, because I was going to pick that this week. At least it was in the running since it was the first, what was considered the first fishing game.
Yeah.
But those ambitions went away pretty quickly after playing it.
It's funny. I almost picked the next title we're going to talk about, 1980s Fishing Derby, which was written by the great David Crane of Pitfall fame. And I remember playing this back in the day, but I thought it was no good. And so I didn't think it was that good a game, and so I tried it, and I didn't like it, so I moved down the line on that one.
Although that was a very action-based fishing game. You know, it was more. It was all about trying to get your fish past the shark, or whatever it was supposed to be at the top. So I mean, that's a 2-minute fishing game. You play it for a couple minutes and you're done.
Yeah. That's funny. This article goes into a lot of the early players in fishing were DOS games. Who'd have thunk it, man?
Yeah.
And including games like Rich Tabor's Bass Champ Pro. I'm a big Rich Tabor fan. You got Bass Class, Bass Duel. These are all the early 90s. I did remember this one from 96, Brent, the Nashville Network's Outdoor Bass Tournament, which was one that actually, because the TNN Bass game sort of got ported.
They pushed it hard.
Well, it got moved to, that actually got made it to the console. And so that was one I'd actually heard of. Let's talk about some of the early entries for the Super Nintendo, one of which was, guess what? The Nashville Network's Tournament of Champions. By the way, the Nashville Network no longer exists. The Nashville Network became Spike Television, and then eventually that became, I think, the Universal Channel or something like that. So they're long gone. Nashville has no network, Brent, unfortunately. But it was the perfect.
Well, what you gonna do?
It was the perfect channel to push a bunch of redneck sports, including Tournament of Champions, because everyone knows that's all it's in Tennessee. It's what everybody says anyway. That's why they're saying that, but not really true. I don't think everyone in Tennessee fishes. But the early TNN games were available on the consoles. Do you remember any of the early console fishing games you might have tried?
No, I
there you go.
I don't play. The only type of fishing games I spent any time with were, of all things, arcade fishing games.
Yeah, talk on some of those. Do you recall any of those? I mean, those had the reel and stuff built in. Pretty neat.
Yeah, the first one, the only one I remember playing, I think it was called Sega Bass Fishing. Yeah. And it had the reel, and it actually had line resistance when you tried to reel stuff in. And you could use the controller, or the controller was the reel, and move it back and forth to fight fish. It was really well done, and it was arcadey enough that pretty much every time you threw your line out, you knew you were going to catch a fish, or at least attempt to catch a fish.
Yeah. So
it kept the action very quick. You know, it's an arcade game. They want you in and out in 3 minutes, I think is what the goal is. But it was fun, and it was something you could play 3 or 4 times while you're waiting for a movie or something, and get some enjoyment from it.
It looked good too. I remember that.
It's a beautiful game.
That came out in sort of the mid to late 90s. Then of course it ended up getting ported over to the Dreamcast in '99. Sega Bass Fishing, and of course the Dreamcast had that great peripheral. I wish I had one of these things because I had the chance to get one, and I just kept passing on it. But they had the rod reel peripheral for the Dreamcast. Did you ever fool with one of these things?
No, not. I think I've held it in a store display, but I don't recall ever playing with it at home.
I did play the game. I actually like Sega Bass Fishing. It's like you said, it's very different. For example, the game I played today, where a lot of fishing games are more like actual fishing, where you sort of throw your line in, and then you sort of just sit there for a while, and then you try again. Where Sega's fishing, it was all action. It was just like watching a fishing show. These suckers were getting bites on every cast, So it's
now, to be fair, I mean, while the number of standalone fishing games is pretty small, the amount of fishing mini games, games within other games, huge.
Yeah.
Almost all of your survival games have some kind of fishing.
Yeah.
And just games that you wouldn't expect to have fishing mini games. The first one that comes to my mind is the ever popular and recently released Hades. It has a fishing game in it, and it is as far away from a fishing game at its core as you could ever have. And some of them are as simple as, take this bait to this certain lake and you'll catch this certain thing. Or some of them are incredibly involved, where you have to find different locations. You have to really battle your fish in. Valheim, the game I know you love so much, has a fishing mini game in it. So it's a lot of work to take what is a mini game in so many other games and stretch it into a full game.
Well, yeah, I agree with you that. I think I like the laid back sort of fishing more than I do the bang bang fish. It's one of the few things I'd rather have less action than more action. The good thing about a fishing game though is you can put up a nice scene on the screen. It's always a beautiful blue sunny day. You're out there, and they take out the parts of fishing that suck. Getting to the lake, walking to the lake, putting your boat on the lake, trying not to dunk your car in the lake when you lower the boat in, like the heat, the bugs on the lake, all the idiots that drive around the lake on a jet ski at Mach 10, or in their boat at top speed trying to kill everybody. These are the parts of the fishing that are not fun, that they don't talk about. Then there's the part of getting the boat out of the lake. When you didn't catch jack squat, you've had too much beer, all the stuff. That's the part of fishing I don't like. If you could just do it like in the game where you just appear on the lake, I would probably go fishing a lot more.
Well, it's for me that none of that stuff is the hassle. I don't mind handling the bait. Because I typically don't use live bait. When I did the handful of times I did fish, I usually use some kind of like super bait or marshmallow type bait or spinners. When you have and think about fishing, Aaron. I don't know how versed you are in fishing.
Not good.
But the experience is a lot different if you're just bobber fishing, where you bait your hook, you throw it in there, and you just kind of sit around. Versus like spinner fishing, where you're casting, 3 or 4 times a minute, and you're just reeling your spinner bait through the water, and then you've got control of the motion of the spinner bait and that sort of thing. Do you ever do that kind of fishing, or do you literally just throw it out there and wait until something happens?
On video games, I do whatever they want me to. I don't care. When we used to go fish in real life, Dad started me on bobber fishing, but it got too boring, and so we pretty much fly fish, which basically just means casting about 1,000 times, and we never got any hits.
Incredibly different, but I understand what you're trying to say.
We should talk about as we run this thing out here. Aside from the fact that the Dreamcast had that crazy controller, what about one thing you saw everywhere, and it was at all the big lots, it was at all the resale shops, for those Wii fishing controllers, because there were some fishing games in the Wii, the Carpella.
Oh yeah, those things were nuts.
Well, it was a cute idea. Did you do any fishing on the Wii?
Nope.
It was pretty good. It did a good job of sort of simulating the fishing rod. I always thought that was a kind of a neat angle. I do want to say one thing before we close up. We had someone in the chat here, O'Brien, ask if we count ice hole fishing in this category. Well, the chances of me ever doing that are 0. Ice fishing seems like the stupidest thing you could possibly do. I know people love it, but
why?
Because you're cold. It's cold. You're on ice. You're on ice. I'm not interested in doing that.
If you do it proper and you have a shelter, it's not cold.
No.
I mean, I've never done it.
You're on ice.
Videos
There's no way it's not cold. You're standing on ice. I'm not buying it. Plus, you've got to get to wherever you're going. Ice hole fishing, forget about it. I'm not even going to consider that. So, with all that said, Brent, it was our task to look over all these different fishing games and pick out a couple winners. You thought outside the box on this one, and we're going to let you lead the dance this week. What do you got?
I brought 1992 Williams classic Fish Tales. Now, this is a pinball machine that has the incredible feel of fishing, but barely has anything to do, the actual actions of fishing. This was actually popular for a few reasons. The theme draws people in. It draws people who aren't necessarily going to normally play pinball in. The header on this pinball machine is a huge, like 12-inch fish, and it flops around as you're playing up in the cage back box area.
You hardly ever see it.
And it really... Huh?
You hardly ever saw that header, though. I very rarely saw it attached.
Oh, I've seen it more than once for sure. But it's very eye-catching. The cabinet itself is very beautiful. Aaron, did you know this was the first pinball machine to use those switches that aren't switches? The optic switches.
No, I did not know that.
Where you press the button and it doesn't actually hit a micro switch.
No.
Yes, this was the first pinball machine to use those. And I'll be honest, I think it did a fine job. I didn't know this, while I was playing it. I never thought, man, these flippers feel off, or I don't feel like I have control. But yeah, it was the first one to use optic flipper switches.
Weird.
So, Fish Tales. What's the big draw of Fish Tales to make you want to play it again and again? It is a high-scoring affair that allows you to go a simple route of hitting the middle feature over and over, or a higher risk, higher reward multi-ball route. And both are very viable for people who play for score, really want to ramp that stuff up. And if you want to play just for story, this isn't as fleshed out as some of the story-based pinball machines, like Who Done It,
or no, it's not that fleshed out.
Even something as less fleshed out, say Addams Family, for a story type affair, but it is there, and it goes over all the fishing tropes about lying about how big the fish was. It has you catching several different types of fish. On the play field, it has a casting reel, and that's what they use as a visual for ball locks. So it does a decent job of bringing elements of fishing into a pinball arena. I don't think it does an excellent job, mainly because it doesn't have you doing nearly enough, pulling the fish in type things. There's nothing that really simulates that in this pinball machine. It's all mostly about shoot a shot, you catch the fish. Shoot a shot, you catch the fish. So I kind of wish they would have done something more with that. However, all in all, this is a fun pinball machine with some of the best music of pinball, all the way out there in pinball. Chris Granner, very popular in the scene, has so many different musical scores. You can get 3 jackpots in this game, Aaron, and every jackpot you shoot for, it plays a different song. Like, overall, I think there's like 14 songs in this thing. It's amazing, the sound work that they did with this. Now, I know we played this, at least I played it on Pinball FX, Aaron. What do you feel was the Pinball FX experience? Because I know you've played this in real life as well.
Yeah. I played this on 2 different simulations of pinball, and I played it in real life. So you just want to go into the Pinball FX. I'll talk about that one first. I actually played that one second. So I'm not mega familiar with this in real life, but I've had a go. One thing that they did in this game was this is a funny thing about these fishing games. Every one of them, they love to redneck these games up. Surely non-rednecks go fishing. That's one thing I've never understood. And sure enough, this thing has the fiddle music, that kind of, him and hawing.
I don't think that's redneck.
That's as hick as it gets. The pick and the banjo. Are you kidding me? The fiddle stuff. It's super hicky. The goof.
They play off the trope.
The goof looks like a hick. You got all yeehaw. You got the fish. That kind of crap. I would love to not see that in a fishing game just once. But with all that said, I mean, yes, the music is.
You don't see that as a drawback, though, do you?
Well, I mean, it doesn't appeal to me as a non-redneck who doesn't fish. It didn't do it for me. But all that said, the music is.
Nobody tell them.
It's solid. Take off. I heard that. So. The Pinball FX thing, well, when you play this in Pinball FX, we have to go over the virtual versions of this, since so few people can play the real ones anymore. It starts off, if you've ever played the Pinball FX series, they jazz up all the tables, all the tables they got that are the new, actual tables, with the Pinball FX gleam. They put a bunch of, special effects on it. They put a dude out there with a fishing pole, just standing around, who'll say some stupid crap. They all the ball shots have all kinds of motion blur on them, and there's points shooting everywhere. It's insanity. So first thing I did was turn that crap off because I hate it. I hate that. If you're gonna
having it as an option, there's nothing wrong with that.
As long as I can turn it off instantly, that's okay. When you can, so I'm not gonna fault it for it, but I don't like it. And also, I'm insulted as a pinball player that they feel the need to have to put that in there. But they do that for the younger demographic, Brent, my opinion. But anyway, as a game, you're right. This doesn't have as much jack as I would have expected. A fight the fish mode, or I mean, the fish. I didn't think the shots were all that great. They're okay. I mean, it's not horrible, but I had trouble hitting a lot of the shots. I noticed that on Pinball FX that they've got the level of the table a lot higher than they do on Pinball Arcade, and by that I mean the table is set steeper, so the ball travels. It's a lot faster a game. But the funny thing about it is that the ball and I have found in all the Pinball FX tables that hitting the ball on those tables for whatever reason it feels like you're smacking around a ping pong ball. The ball feels real light. So it's the weird combination of being very steep and the ball being very light. And what does that make it? It makes it fast, but it doesn't. But you don't really feel like that you're having much of an impact on the ball. So it's a very weird feeling to play like that. I thought the call-outs and stuff were, I mean, they were what you would expect. I thought the light-ups were sort of, I mean, I would call this, in real life, I would call this sort of a middle-tier pinball machine. I mean, there's nothing offensive about it. There's no shots like, say, Monopoly's got, where you've got something square in the middle of the playfield right in front of you. It screws up the whole thing. It's not that bad. It's just sort of a generic layout. I would not say there's any great ramps or anything. I mean, nothing. I mean, it does have crossovers and stuff, but it's nothing like makes you go bananas.
Yeah, it has 2 ramps.
Well, I mean, it does have ramps.
A 3-ball multi-ball.
But it doesn't have anything sexy. You know what I'm saying?
I would agree and disagree with that. Fish Tales was kind of made to look like a player's pinball machine, but there's actually a few little quirks to it that aren't obvious at first glance that makes it a very difficult pinball machine. Aaron, did you know that the flippers that are used on Fish Tales are a 1/4 inch shorter than your standard pinball flipper?
I did not know.
Yes. And obviously that makes center drains a lot more of a problem.
Which is funny because I had much worse time on the outer lanes draining than I did coming down the middle. This thing is a drain machine on the outside.
The main shot, or the obvious main shot, is a shot up the middle to go on either side of a boat. And it always loops around and feeds it back to your flipper.
Yeah.
That shot is actually designed that when you miss it, because there's a captive ball in the middle, it's a suicide shot. I mean, if you actually shoot for it, there's a high probability that you're going to lose your ball. And that's by design. They made that gap in the middle a little bit wider and made a straight up the table shot appealing, but a little bit dangerous. So that all goes into a good design of a pinball machine, and I can respect that. However, for me, if this was in a lineup with 5 or 6 different pinball machines, I might play it once, because I like to play every pinball machine a place has, unless there's just like hundreds.
Yeah.
And then even then I would want to play them all, but probably can't. But this is not a machine that I ever went out of my way to play. Like there are certain pinball machines I will drive, 20, 30 miles to play.
Yeah.
Star Trek Next Generation, Theater of Magic, Roadshow. Those are machines that I seek out to play. This is not one of those things. I wouldn't avoid playing this. If I had, access to it down the street, I would definitely go and play it right now. But it is a middle-of-the-road pinball machine.
Yeah, I agree.
This was also very wide released, Aaron. This had 13,640 machines produced in the world of pinball. And now this was in 92, the end of 92, which was a big...
It came out at the right time.
Boom year.
Yeah.
But that's still a lot of machines. And it was a lot of machines because it was very popular. One other bit of Easter egg tidbit, Aaron. The video mode in this, right?
Yeah.
It has you shooting the boaters and the jet skis with torpedoes. And it kind of feels out of left field, right? Don't you agree?
It is. It doesn't make any sense, is a better way to put it.
And a lot of these games, you have to go to the flyer or the instruction manual to kind of fill in that gap of how this fits into the game. Fish Tales, that's not true. You actually have to go to the 10-minute long promotional video.
Yeah.
And in the promotional video, it follows the day of these 2 fishermen, and they're out in the lakes, and they're not catching anything. So they feel that it has to be because of all the other lake traffic, all these jet skis and boats going on, and that is how it ties into Fish Tales. So if you've never seen the promotional video, that video mode kind of feels out of place. So just another one of those pinball quirks that makes no sense in its own context, but if you dig deep enough, it all fits together.
And no one on Earth would have seen those. So that's that's what makes that dumb. Yeah.
Well, it's not dumb.
I mean, it's nonsensical. I mean, you could have listen. I'm sure people on the lake that have those idiots drive by want to torpedo them. I have no doubt. You didn't try this in Pinball Arcade, did you, per chance?
I did not.
I still have the Pinball Arcade version of this. Of course, there was a big kerfluffle in Pinball when Pinball Arcade lost the rights on the Williams tables. Pinball FX horked them and then redid them. And this is yet another example where the Pinball Arcade's engine is just better. It just is. Now,
it is.
It's not as the lighting and stuff not as attractive. You know, if you put them side by side, but it just plays better. It plays the Pinball Arcade's engine is just a better engine overall. And I don't just mean because of all the added baloney. Because like I said, you can turn that off with one button. It's just the ball physics and the way the ball moves. It does. It feels better. You know, this game, if you look at it, I mean, listen, it's early 90s. It's Williams. They're not putting out duds. And this is certainly not a dud. You can also see how this could have a mass appeal. You could put this in a local supermarket or a store or a bait shop or a club. You can put it anywhere that has kind of a more countrified air to it, like West Virginia, for example. You can put one of these anywhere, and it works. I noticed that the NASCAR machine was like that too. I mean, any sort of rural area you want to put a pinball machine, that kind of stuff will play. And clearly, this got a lot of plays because they made so many of it. So they knew that they had a lot of success with it. But I mean, if you look at it in the terms of history or in terms of playability, I think it's a decent player. But it's okay. It's got that early 90s mentality when it comes to the way they've got the DMD and the flippers and even the art package. I mean, I don't think the art package is great. It's okay.
It's colorful.
It's colorful, but I wouldn't call it like stellar, for example. I'd say
I wouldn't either.
I would say slightly above average. You know, so I'd say I would call the game that in general. I would say it's. I mean, if you consider that Williams pinball games by default are above average 9 times out of 10 because it's Williams, this is a decent game.
Yeah, the only thing that is just absolutely stand out on this, in my opinion, is the music. There's so many soundtracks, and they're all so upbeat and fast paced, which fits the pinball machine very well. That's its standout for me is the music. Just out of curiosity, Aaron, how much do you think these sell for nowadays?
Well,
in decent shape.
I would, despite the fact that so many were made, pinball machines have went bananas. I'm going to say you're probably looking at about a $4,000 to $5,000 machine.
$4,000 to $6,000. Yeah. Yep, that's what these sell.
Which is funny because those early to mid '90s, middle of the road machines, they're all over $4,000. You can forget about it. It doesn't matter what they are, So if you're buying stuff from the '80s, you might get lucky if it's not popular and get it for under $2,000. But anything from Williams at this time period is going to be up there.
It sure is.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, what did you bring to the table for us?
Well, I went more conventional, the Brent, than you did. I went with a little game called Gone Fishin'. Gone Fishin'. Yes. Now, this was I played this on the Amiga, just because that's the format that I'm most familiar with, obviously. But this actually had a release originally on the Atari ST. So this is one of the times where the Atari ST port came to the Amiga. And this was released on the Amiga in '88 on 2 discs, and it was published by an outfit called Interstel. It's funny because I just stumbled across Interstel during my live stream the other night. They were interesting. I want to go into them real quick before we get into the game proper. They were a company that was established early on as being called Cygnus, and it was a company founded by Trevor C. Sorensen. And the funny thing about this company was it was created to publish games specifically for him because he'd made a game. This is one of those early programmers that had no way to distribute his game properly. And he had a game that was sort of a hit called Starfleet in '81. And so he used this company to actually, to publish his game. Eventually, they actually got an affiliation with EA, and believe it or not, Gone Fishing actually was distributed by EA to a certain degree. So there was an EA tie in here. Interstel wasn't around for a long time. They ended up ceasing operation in 92, but in 88, they had a game called Empire War Game of the Century, and it was named Computer Game of the Year by Computer Gaming World Magazine. That's a huge deal for a company I've never heard of, and for a bunch of games I've never heard of. I thought that was real strange. But so they had a brief time play in the computer business, and they were out the door by 92, and they were, by the way, based in Webster, Texas, in case anybody wondered. So that's who put this game together. The original guy that worked on this was that actually wrote this for the ST was named Roger Damon, and this got ported over to the Amiga by Tim Lindstrom and Doug Goretsch. So this game was a two-man job to port it over. I looked at the ST version of this, and they look pretty similar. There's also a DOS version, which I think you looked at the DOS version.
Yeah, DOS is what I actually played this one.
Of course, this is a fishing game, and based on the one from the ST the year before. So this game is real unusual, man. In terms of a fishing game, and I don't think it takes a different approach than like the Sega stuff we were talking about earlier. It starts off with a opening scene that looks like I made it in with Windows Paint, and it also sounds like Boat. They had Boat record the old Andy Griffith theme, because the opening song in this is one of the most wretched, and I'll listen to Boat every week, and the opening song in this is one of the most wretched things I've ever heard. It's got Go Away Heat with Me. It's the old Andy Griffith show where they whistle at the beginning, but it's done in like, they did it in two voice, and the two voices don't match up. And so it's really bad. Dirt worst song. You should look this game up just to hear that music, because you need to hear it once to understand how horrible it is. So once you start,
if you want to hear it even worse, go see it in DOS.
Does it use the DOS speaker?
Yes.
I think that'd be better, frankly. So in this game, you start a game, and you literally do everything from plan when you're going to go fishing to what you're going to take fishing. You plan where you're going to fish. I mean, it's an all-encompassing fishing experience. The first thing you do is you have a calendar where you decide when you're going to go to work and when you're going to fish. Now, I can tell you, the very first thing I did was just not go to work at all, and then I ran out of money, like instantly.
So that doesn't work.
You have to keep going to work when you play this game. Then you go to this like shed. I mean, I assume it could be the guy's house.
It's the guy's house.
And then in the house, you've got a table, and this is sort of a menu to go do different stuff. There's a book that shows you all the fish you've caught. There's a thing that tells you the weather, and there's the calendar that lets you plan your week. And then there's a book that lets you pick the lake you're going to go fishing on. And if you go through the lakes, each of the lakes will have a name, and it'll have what kind of fish you're going to catch there in terms of the size, And it's also going to have whether there's going to be a tournament at the lake where you can win some cash. If you go to a lake with a tournament, you don't think you don't have to pay. You got to pay to get these tournaments, and it ain't cheap, is it? You're talking like 500 wigwams right there.
Yeah, you can't even afford to go to the tournament when you first start.
Right, you have to actually get some money together before you can go to a tournament. Plus, you want to learn what you're doing. Did you ever enter a tournament, by the way?
No.
I actually got into a tournament. I did. I finally, after struggling, I did get to one. I played this game well into the night and early this morning, trying to get further than I had because I'd done so poorly. So once you've planned out what lake you're going to go to, it's time to go to the tackle shop, and you've got to go and fill your tackle box up with various bits of bait. They've got all kinds of different types of bait: bait for little fish, bait for big fish, bait for people that like to let the bait sink to the floor of the lake, and bait for people that like to have do stuff like yank the pole and have the bait dance around. You've also got the ability to upgrade your boat. You start off with like a real crap boat. You can upgrade to a better boat, but I never had the money to upgrade to a better boat. You also have the ability to get one of those fish finder computers. I never had the money to buy that either because those things were super expensive. So once you have determined the bait, the whole 9 yards, then it's time to hit the lake. Brent. And so what you're presented with is a split screen. On the left, you've got the lake, your boat, and with the land mass around. And on the right, you've got a picture of your boat with what's in it. You've got sort of like a first-person view of what you're seeing from the boat, and then and what time it is. And so basically, this screen is used to help you identify certain areas of the lake that will have better fishing depending on what you're looking on. As you go through the lake, you'll notice that the lake turns from different shades of blue to indicate deeper or more shallow water. You'll also find that if you look around, you can find parts of the lake that have like brush, like vegetation in them. And that's where I like to go, because if I knew anything from actual fishing, I knew that to catch like bass and stuff, you want to go into those areas that have like something where the fish would eat it. Now, I didn't do this at first, but I watched a very helpful video that showed me that one of the things you need to do is when you get near the area you're going to fish, you're going to want to turn off your big motor and turn on the little dinky motor on the front of your boat so you can kind of creep in there and not scare the fish. Did you know about that?
Yes.
So did you know that from real fishing or from watching a playthrough?
From real fishing.
Okay, because that makes sense, but I never thought about it. In fact, when I wondered why the boat had two motors for the longest time. I was like, oh, that's why. So anyway, once you creep into the area, and by the way, we should talk about how you steer the boat. It's pretty weird, isn't it? How you...
Well, I mean, that's pretty common.
You use your mouse for all this game, and you hold the mouse button down, and you kind of move the mouse back and forth to simulate the motor on the back of the boat moving angle. And so it takes some getting used to, but eventually you'll get it.
Well, no, it's way simpler than that.
Well, it took me. I had trouble.
Your boat moves in the 8 cardinal directions, up, down, left, right, and then the diagonals. Yeah. What you're really doing is you're saying, I want to move left or right, and after a while, it will flip your boat to the next diagonal or the next straight. So it's not hard to actually drive the boat.
Very good. Well, I had trouble, so but you get used to it.
Fair enough.
The good thing is, much like a real lake, even if you suck at driving the boat, generally you're okay until it's time to pick that boat up on the dock. Then if you suck at it, you got problems. So what you want to do is you steer your boat to where you're going to fish, and then it's time to drop anchor. There's a drop anchor button. And once you drop anchor, it's time for you to begin the actual fishing at the lake. Now, the first thing you do when you get to the point where you want to fish is you open up the old tackle box, which is in your boat. And the tackle box has all the different lures you've got. And you need to pick a lure, because when you pick this lake, it sort of told you how big the fish were that were in the lake. And so you want to pick a lure that will accommodate the size of fish you're going after. Now, I don't know what does what. So I tried to gauge the best I could. Did you have any way to determine which lure was best for the job?
Well, it's not. It is somewhat based on how big the fish is, but more importantly, it's where the location in the water you want to fish, because you can fish surface, middle, or bottom, and the lures will naturally gravitate to whatever corresponding level of the water you want to, it's made for.
Right.
So all that made sense. And then, of course, from there, bigger lures to catch bigger fish.
So once you've got the appropriate lure on your fishing line, it's time to cast the thing. And what you do is you literally you put the mouse where you want to cast the line in the lake, and he'll throw the line out there, and then you get this interesting perspective of basically a ghost is holding no one holding your pole. It just floats in front of you. So presumably you can pretend that your hands are on it. And then you see a little window that has a cut scene of whatever you're fishing with, represented by a dot that floats down into the water. So you sort of see underwater. All right. And then you basically can decide whether you want to start reeling the thing in. The one thing about using the mouse that adds to this game is that when you move the mouse, the pole corresponds with how the mouse is moved. And your left mouse button will reel in your line. And your right mouse button sort of makes you jerk the pole. Okay, both
sets the hook.
That's right. I don't know the technical term. So I call it jerk the pole. That's the way you do it.
Yeah.
That's the way we do it.
That's what the jerk would say.
They take off. So as you move your little lure through the water. Oh, also mention there's a before you, when you cast out, there's an S and an F. Okay, we need to talk about that. I thought it meant sink or float, but the video I saw said it meant slow or fast.
Slow or fast reeling.
Yeah,
yes.
You can see I had to learn a lot about what I was doing here. So you pick it the way the speed you're going to reel in your line right there. So anyway, you've got the lure in the water, you're floating the lure around, waiting for the fish to hit, and eventually a fish will, well, maybe, if you're in the right spot, a fish will come rolling in, and they come in fast, don't they, Brent? And they hit that lure, and when that happens, you've got to go pretty quick. And what you've got to do is you've got to, and I learned this about after 1,000 attempts, is you've got to hit the right button real quick to set the hook, like Brent said. Then you start reeling that sucker in. Now, you can't go crazy with reeling him in because occasionally he'll jump out of the water, right? Like a fish would. And if you're reeling him when he jumps out of the water, he'll fall off the hook. So you've got to, when that happens, you sort of got to stop reeling for a second until he falls back in the water. If you're successful, you'll ultimately will pull the fish out of the water, and then it'll basically weigh him on the spot. Say, okay, this fish is 1 pound or 2 pounds. And then once that happens, you're good to go on catching another fish. The game is in no hurry. This game, that's one of the things I like about it. I mean, you could sit down, and like I said, there's a clock that sort of simulates the day, but it doesn't move. It's not like it's going like 50 times the speed. You're out there for a full day of fishing, so you've got plenty of time.
Every time you cast, it takes 10 minutes.
I mean, if you think about it, that's nothing.
But you are on the lake until 9:30 p.m., and you arrive at the lake at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So you get plenty of casts.
Can you imagine how sunburnt you would be? Because that's one thing. When you're out in a boat, man, I've been out in the boat and not be fishing, and that sun can be brutal. The instructions when you actually start reeling it in, it sort of will tell you what to do. It'll also tell you like what kind of fish it is. That's sort of important. Now, I did not ever get any huge fish, right?
Did you ever catch a fish?
I did catch a fish. I did it this morning, actually, after days of trying. I can tell you, we're reeling off this thing, no pun intended. But, I mean, this game takes a lot of I had to watch. There aren't that many people that play this online, but I watched every one of them, including a guy who just cussed a lot and screamed at the game. That guy didn't help me that much, but another guy actually gave me some better techniques that were helpful, because this is not Sega bass fishing where you figure it out in 2 seconds. This one takes you have to sit there and figure it out. But I found this strangely amusing, and I actually enjoyed this quite a bit. Brent, I'm gonna lie to you, the graphics are. I mean, this is '88. The Amiga could have effectively been capable of almost photographic, at best, realism. You don't get that. I mean, the graphics on this are not great, but they're serviceable, and you get the picture. And when you get to the point where you're actually doing tournaments and stuff, I'm sure it's a lot more fun if you get further in. It's hard to learn right away. The learning curve is, I wouldn't call it mega steep, but I would call it it's not just a jump in and give it a whirl. What was your thoughts on this one, Brent?
I attempted to play this on the Amiga because I knew that's where you were playing it, and I had no luck. You said you had no problem. I for whatever reason, I couldn't get it. Yeah, for whatever reason, I could not get it to load on anything that I tried to load it on. So I went to the DOS version, and I watched videos of the Amiga version, and I can say pretty confidently they are pretty much the same game, with the exception of the visuals and the sound are different. Yeah. But all the core concepts are there. So when I dove into the game, and I figured the whole work week fish thing, I thought, oh, that's kind of cute. I wonder how this is going to play out, because obviously they're going for a more sim game. Yeah. And I got in my boat and I went out to my first place, and I bought all my stuff, and I threw my line out there, and I noticed that when you're controlling the pole, you can go up, down, and neutral, and you can go left, right. And I was like, okay. As soon as I saw that, I knew I was screwed, because that means this game is going to be a super sim, and it is. When you throw your line out, excuse me, that part is the least sim of the bunch, because you just point to where you click where you want to throw your line, and it just happens.
It's funny because in most games, that's one of the biggest parts. Yeah, and the casting, and the casting, you just tell it where you want to. Your guy's a mega caster. You don't have to worry about it.
He always nails the right spot every time. But as soon as you get into the lure in the water, you have to control every aspect of it. It does show you on a separate little screen, a pip, what the lure is doing, and without that, the game would be unplayable.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to actually control the level that the lure is keeping. For me, I had Fish, and I'm assuming it's the same in the Amiga version. Fish can either swim by low, medium, or high. And if the lure isn't sort of in their line, they won't go for it. And I'm sure it also has to do with what kind of lure you're using. So you have to reel, at least this is what I did. I would throw the line out, and I would immediately start reeling it in with a spinner bait. And the spinner bait would want to either sink to the bottom or go to the top, and I wanted it to keep it in the middle. So I had to keep flicking the fishing rod just ever so slightly to kind of keep it in that middle area, which is exactly how spinner fishing works. You want to keep motion on the line and simulate a hurt creature or a hurt prey for the fish. I found it incredibly fulfilling to keep, not to catch the fish, but to keep everything where I wanted to keep it. That aspect of the game, absolutely wonderful. Hooking the fish is a timing mini game. The fish will swim up, and it will, hit your bait, and you have to stop reeling and then hit the button, which sounds simple, but it is super fast. And depending on what size the fish is, it could be impossible fast, at least impossible for me. So now you've got the fish hooked. What are you going to do? You start reeling it in. And the videos I saw for the Amiga version, it was just a simple reel it in, nothing bad happens. Apparently on the DOS version, you're fishing with a line of tissue paper, because my line would snap and the fish would get loose almost every single time. And it's one of those things where reeling the fish in would take 3 minutes of fighting the fish. Well, because the fish would swim to the left or to the right.
You may have been fishing with a lot. Like, I went to places that I knew had small fish. I got the tip from that video. And so the smaller fish, they hardly fought at all. You yank them out real quick. Like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was fighting these things like David and Goliath.
Well, you need, you can invest in better equipment, I think, to you probably just had, you probably didn't have.
No, I did. Oh. I bought the tools that were supposed to make fishing easier.
Right, but I think you can, later on, you can buy better line or something, because I never broke a line, not even one time, but I always went fishing with the little stuff.
Did you ever lose your bait?
No.
Yeah, see, I did that too. So when you're fighting the fish will swim left or right, and it will pull the line out, fighting the line. So when the fish is swimming away from you, you have to stop reeling. And when the fish is swimming to the left, you have to point your pole to the left and give it a little bit more line. And there are times when the fish will swim to the extreme left of the screen or the extreme right of the screen, and if it does that, it gets away. So you have to pull it by moving your rod to one side of the screen, but not reel. So you have to kind of jerk it back and forth to lead it back into the direction you want to do it. It is incredibly in-depth and a lot like real fishing. I had the best time with this game, except it's so dang hard. Well,
I think you made it. I think if you'd played it with a lighter fish, I think you would have gotten more success. I really do.
I told myself I am not quitting until I catch a fish.
Yeah.
So I played for hours, breaking lines, losing lures, repositioning the boats. I restarted I would run out of money, restart the game. Yeah. Put in a new name, start all the way back over, go to different lakes. And I eventually caught a fish And it was so rewarding. It was so absolutely rewarding that I felt like I'd accomplished something.
You remember how big
and
it was?
I could feel myself. 5.
Oh, yeah, that's a bigger fish.
I think it was 5.
Yeah.
But I felt so accomplished by this.
Yeah.
And that's something you know, video games, they push you to do something and you finally do it and you feel accomplished. That's exactly what this game did for me. And I played, you know, after I caught a fish, I felt good. I played a little bit more. I caught another fish, and I felt like I was in the groove. And then, unfortunately, my time able to play the game ran out. But I absolutely, absolutely love this game. I think this would be perfect for anyone out there that wants a fishing sim where you feel like you're getting better, you feel like you're accomplishing something. Now it's frustrating. It's super frustrating, and at least on on DOS, it has the absolute worst sound effects for when you're driving the boat. So much so that I had to take my headphones off while I was playing.
Yeah, you're gonna want to play this on the ST or the Amiga, probably. I don't blame you. But hey, you know, one thing I like, and you mentioned, is that when you move the mouse and you actually are moving the fishing rod, when you actually have the lure down, it's just like real fishing, where you kind of jerk the thing a little bit, and they do a great job. I mean, it
dances.
It's funny that a game that seems this basic and came out in '88, it's an unusually apt capturing of fishing, and including the frustrating parts. Listen, how many times we went fishing over the years back when I used to do it, and I never hardly ever caught anything. You know, so at least you have a better chance here. Again, it's one of those games you have to learn the nuances of it. But I think it's people can enjoy this surprisingly. If you're looking for something just to it's a nice way to just kill some time too. You can just sit there and play it, sort of like real fishing. I mean, it's pretty laid back, you know.
Now I don't agree with that. Because I was on the edge of my seat fighting these fish.
Well, go for the smaller ones. It's not that it won't be as bad.
I was getting mad and slamming my fist down on the table. And, you know, when you lose the lures, which I didn't lose a whole lot of lures, but when you do, it actually leaves your inventory.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to, if you haven't bought spares of it, it's gone. You can't use that anymore. Thankfully, the lures are priced cheap enough that you can kind of stock up on your favorite lures. But, oh, yeah, this was a heck of a good game. This absolutely... If you have any interest in fishing games, check this one out.
You know, this is one of the few games ever that I can ever remember, because fishing is a hobby, just like retro computing or gaming or anything. This is one of the few games I've ever played where you actually have to keep going to your real job to fund your hobby in the game.
Yeah.
I thought that aspect, what a weird thing to put in there. But I mean, the funny thing is, because like I said, the very first thing I did was just not going to work at all. Well, you run out of money into fishing.
Yeah. Now, you do get money based on the fish you catch.
Right. But I'm saying, if you go out there and suck, you're done. And you can lose you can use up every bit of your money instantly. It's just like a real hobby.
Because you have to pay to go to the lakes, too.
Oh, yeah. And the tournaments are expensive. It's all the equipment's expensive. It's just like real life. Believe it or not, I found some reviews of this game, the Brent. The people in Lemon give this a 6.17. I found a review from a magazine called, I think this is probably a French magazine called Generation 4. They give this a 87%. The Games Machine gave this an 88. And Compute's Amiga Resource looked at this and gave it an 80. So surprisingly decent scores for this game. Considering, you know, when you first look at it, it doesn't blow you out of the water. This game was also, they had a title change, and the name, it went from being called Gone Fishing to being called Real Fishing, REEL. I like Gone Fishing better personally, but
I do as well.
What was it called on the DOS version? Do you remember?
It was listed under both.
There you go. You know, I should look. I don't think we got any Discord reviews on this, but let me have a quick look just to make sure. I think I'd say a lot of people. I know you weren't the only person that actually had trouble using the Amiga version. It's funny. I didn't have it on on my Amiga section, but I did have it on my Amiga Forever, and it came right up with no problem. So that's how I played it. Anyway, it's an interesting title, and I think if you're looking to try any sort of virtual fishing, this one's definitely worth a look. In fact, I'm thinking about doing a stream of me playing this for a couple hours just for fun. So it might be something you can see in the future. Something else that you're going to see in the future, and the future is now. Bam, it's time for the wheel, Brent. Let's get it going.
Oh.
So, this time out, Brent, because we're almost out of pie pieces. But there's one pie piece we dread more than almost any, and it's on here. It's the chat choice, Brent. So people in the chat room, if you get picked, we're depending on you to come up with something real clever. Our retro rewind this week is the early 80s arcade, Brent. Early 80s arcade. Do you have a prep?
I mean, I could go for some of that.
You like that one, do you? Okay. Okay, let me get it.
Oh, you know what? No, I'm rooting for chat choice. I want to see chat help us out here.
Okay, here we go.
You are really zoomed in.
I know. I love it.
All right.
And the winner is, bam. Oh, boy. Non-sport manager games.
Okay.
Non-sport manager games. This was a suggestion from Olaf Hope, Brent. So non-sport manager games. Can you give us some examples of what that would be?
Your mic sounded like crap, but I know you're going to reposition it. Anything where you manage either a team or
non-sport.
A city. Yeah, well, no, a team of people,
I see.
not a athletic team. I would think of Game Dev Tycoon, Prison Architect, those type of games. You're managing people, some against their will.
This will require great amounts of research for me to come up with one. Usually when we spin these things, I've got something right away. But Olaf Hope has actually thrown me for a loop here with this, and I'll have to really ponder it to come.
Now we need to clarify something. I see chat saying stuff like SimCity and Populous. I don't agree that that's a management game. What do you think, Aaron? We need to make a call.
That's not what I was thinking.
Are we going to widen the scope to that sort of affair, or are we looking that you're actually managing a team
Frontier
of people?
Gibberish is on my wavelength. He mentions a Rockstar Ate My Hamster where you manage a rock and roll act. That's more like what I'm thinking, not like a sim type game.
Okay, so we're saying, like Game Dev Tycoon, you control a team of people.
Yeah, that would probably do it. Of course, we did that one already, but yeah. So let's go down that road. And we can run them past each other to make sure we both think that we're in line. So an interesting suggestion from Olaf Hope. Well done,
Absolutely.
Well done. Listen, we appreciate everybody for joining us today. We had a good crowd in the old chat room. Brent, you got anything you want to plug while we're on here today?
I think I've got a leak in the bathroom.
Good.
I want to get that thing plugged.
Listen, you're a goof. Hey, I'll plug a few things while we're here. We are only 2 weeks away. In less than 2 weeks from the Amigos 300th episode. Unfortunately, Amigo Brent is going to be out of town for that episode. But it will be, I believe it's going to be May 14th, Brent, will be the big day for Amigos 300. We're looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. I also want to mention that we've got the TeamSpeak Regulars on our ARG Presents Twitch channel. Join up, if you will. And then come play. We had a good 4-hour game session last night with a bunch of people playing live modern games online, streamed on Twitch. If you're interested, catch us in Discord under the TeamSpeak Regulars channel, and or drop me a note for any sort of details. And if you need to reach me and the Brent, you can get hold of us at argpresents@mail.com with your questions, comments, your pie pieces. We'll take all that stuff, Brent, because we are not very creative, frankly.
Greedy.
Oh, yeah, that too. I forgot about that. And greedy. So there you go. That's it. We're out the door. And until next week, go get you some fishing done. Bam.
Thanks for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Hello to our YouTube subscribers and our Twitch followers. A special thank you to Duncan Styles for our vector graphics and Bartbit for an amazing closing theme. Want to help keep ARG spinning for as little as $1 a month? You can do so at our new Patreon at patreon.com/ARG Presents. Just like these fine folks: Graham W. Vetke, Rollo, Olaf Hope, Anthony Jarvis, Terry Howard, Gary Heather, John Schaller, The Slow Norris, Frodo NL, Steve Rasmussen, Bernhard Lucas, Chris Folds, Mitsuyama, Jason Warnes, Rob Black O'Hara, Andy Craig, Dave Velociraptor, Retroalgy, Hermsky, Roushi, John Dykeman, Jerry Dennington, Z9K9, and Mr. B. Don't want to explain another credit card bill? That's okay too. You can help us out by leaving us a positive review on Spotify or Apple iTunes. Have an idea for a wheel piece? Email it to us at argpresents@mail.com. We film live every Sunday, 10 a.m. EDT on Twitch. Hope to see you there.